The Order of Things, An Archeology of the Human Sciences. Written by Michel Foucault. Introduction: The Architecture of Knowledge. Every civilization is built not only on cities and institutions, but on invisible structures of thought. These frameworks, older than politics and deeper than belief, determine what a society takes for granted, what counts as reason, what counts as madness, what counts as truth. They form the ground beneath knowledge itself. From the dawn of human inquiry, people have sought to impose order on the chaos of experience. Yet that order is never natural. It is constructed, shifting with time and culture. What seems eternal in one century becomes incomprehensible in another. The language of gods yields to that of reason, and reason one day yields to something new. Knowledge, then, is not a mirror of the world, but a map of assumptions. Every era has its own episteme, its underlying logic of understanding. Within that logic, science, art, and morality find coherence. Beyond it, they dissolve. The task is not to discover timeless truth, but to see the patterns that bind an age's imagination. When those patterns collapse, entire civilizations rediscover their blindness. In that moment of disorientation, when the old order fades and the new one is not yet visible, the world begins to think again. Chapter 1: The Hidden Grammar of Civilizations. What if history is not the story of progress, but the slow transformation of what thought itself can be? Beneath the surface of language and art lies an unconscious grammar, a deep structure that defines what a culture can express. Words, classifications, and symbols are not mere tools of description. They are the conditions of intelligibility. Each civilization, without knowing it, writes its own dictionary of the possible. It arranges nature, human behavior, and morality into categories that make sense only within its invisible syntax. This hidden grammar governs more than language. It shapes the sciences, the organization of knowledge, even the idea of humanity. The Renaissance, for instance, saw the world as a vast web of resemblances. The universe was bound together by signs, echoes, and analogies. To know something was to perceive its likeness to something else. Knowledge meant reading the divine handwriting scattered through creation. But this mode of understanding would not last. As new discoveries and methods emerged, the grammar of resemblance gave way to the logic of representation. The world ceased to speak in symbols and began to be measured, classified, and named. Civilizations do not simply change their knowledge, they change the very form of knowing. When that shift happens, history rewrites itself without realizing it. Chapter 2: The Renaissance Order, Resemblance and Revelation. During the Renaissance, the universe was alive with connections. Everything resembled everything else. The stars reflected the soul, plants mirrored virtues, and disease was read through the signatures of nature. To understand the world was to decipher its hidden correspondences. The scholar was a translator of the divine order, reading the world as one reads a sacred text. This way of thinking united science, art, and faith. Alchemy, astrology, medicine, and theology shared a common foundation: the belief that meaning lay in similarity. Knowledge was poetic, intuitive, and analogical. The world revealed itself through pattern and likeness rather than analysis and proof. But resemblance, for all its beauty, lacked precision. The world it described could not easily measure, test, or replicate its truths. As the age of exploration unfolded and new lands and species were discovered, the old language of analogy began to fracture. It could no longer account for the vastness and diversity of reality. Out of this tension, a new order of thought emerged, one that sought to replace resemblance with representation, intuition with classification. The age of revelation gave way to the age of reason. Chapter 3. The Classical Age: Representation and Certainty. By the 17th century, a profound transformation had taken hold. Knowledge no longer relied on signs of resemblance, but on the arrangement of representation. The world was reimagined as a system of objects that could be observed, categorized, and compared. Science became the language of clarity. Mathematics replaced metaphor. Nature was dissected, measured, and mapped. Certainty came from representation, the careful alignment between words and things. The encyclopedia, the laboratory, and the museum became temples of this new order. Language, once a mirror of divine meaning, became a transparent medium for description. The task of thought was no longer to reveal hidden likenesses, but to represent the visible world with precision. The universe became a chart, and man its cartographer. This age built the foundations of modern science and philosophy, yet within its precision lay a silent fragility. To represent the world is to believe that it can be captured, that every phenomenon, every life, can be placed within the grid of reason. But grids, however perfect, can only contain what they recognize. What lies beyond them remains unthinkable. The classical age gave humanity mastery over order, but cost it a sense of mystery. Chapter 4. The Modern Episteme: Man as the Measure of All Things. In the 19th century, another shift occurred, one that placed humanity itself at the center of knowledge. The modern age was born not from discovery, but from reflection, the realization that man was both the subject and object of understanding. Biology, economics, and linguistics arose as the great sciences of life, labor, and language. Each sought to explain not the cosmos, but the human condition. Knowledge turned inward. Humanity became its own specimen, studying itself through the instruments it had created. This self-reflective gaze transformed philosophy, art, and science alike. The question was no longer, what is the order of nature, but what is the nature of the knower? The human mind became both the architect and the inhabitant of meaning. For the first time, knowledge appeared finite. To study humanity was to confront limitation, mortality, desire, error, and time. Certainty dissolved into self-awareness. The modern world, for all its progress, discovered its own contingency. Humanity's triumph, as the measure of all things, concealed a deeper truth. By placing itself at the center, it also became trapped within its own image. Chapter 5. The Death of Man: The Limits of Human-Centered Thought. When the figure of man became the foundation of all knowledge, philosophy crowned him as both creator and creation. But every foundation erodes. The sciences that once promised mastery began to reveal instability. Biology uncovered the randomness of evolution. Psychology revealed the unconscious. Linguistics exposed the autonomy of language. The result was unsettling. The very being that had claimed to understand everything discovered that it was governed by forces it could not control. Reason found itself haunted by what it could not explain. Instinct, language, history, and chance. The modern episteme had reached its limit. Man, the central figure of knowledge for 2 centuries, began to fade, not as a biological species, but as a concept. The human was no longer the measure of meaning, but one element among many in a vast and impersonal system. This realization was not despair, but release. To move beyond the cult of man was to rediscover the strangeness of thought itself, to see knowledge once more as an open field rather than a mirror of the self. Civilizations die not when they fall to armies, but when their ways of thinking can no longer hold the world. Chapter 6. Archeology of the Future. What comes after us? Every order of knowledge contains the seeds of its transformation. As one system of understanding reaches its peak, it begins to reveal what it cannot explain. The cracks in the modern world's faith in progress and human centrality signal the birth of another episteme, one that has yet to be named. This emerging order will not revolve around man as subject, but around networks, systems, and relations. Knowledge will be less about essence and more about connection. The sciences of information, complexity, and culture already hint at this shift. The task of thought is to listen for the tremors of what is coming, to read the signs of change not as catastrophe, but as creation. Each collapse in the history of knowledge makes room for a new way of seeing. What comes after the modern age may not celebrate the human at its center, but rediscover the wonder of being part of something larger, a world that thinks, speaks, and organizes itself in ways that transcend us. Conclusion. The fragile mirror of knowledge. Knowledge is a mirror that never reflects the same face twice. Each age believes its image eternal, until time reveals it as one more fleeting form. From the Renaissance's vision of resemblance to the modern obsession with the human self, every order of thought has imagined itself the final truth. Yet truth, in history, is always provisional. To understand this fragility is not to fall into skepticism, but to gain freedom. The limits of thought are not walls, but horizons, places from which new landscapes become visible. When one structure of knowledge ends, it does not signal decay, but renewal. In the fading outline of man, a deeper humility emerges. Knowledge ceases to be conquest and becomes conversation. Between language and silence, presence and absence, mind and world. And in that fragile balance, the human story continues, forever reordering the order of things. Thanks for listening.
Did you enjoy this book summary? Got ideas on how we can make it even better? Drop us a quick note. We're always listening and learning from you.